Inside America's Boardrooms, the informational show for board members and corporate secretaries. Brought to you with knowledge partners NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.
Welcome to this special edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, CEO of Boardroom Resources, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to our annual New Year's show. This is when we don't take ourselves very seriously in the beginning. And first of all, we want to say to everybody, Happy New Year. And first of all, my guest is Cindy Fornelli, who's the Executive Director for the Center of Audit Quality. Cindy, thank you for joining me. We want to wish everybody from Boardroom Resources, from NASDAQ and the CAQ, Happy New Year's.
Yes,
okay?
Looking forward to a wonderful 2016.
Yes, we are. Happy New Year's, everybody. So that is the fun part of our show. We want to make sure that people know that we don't take ourselves too seriously here, but we are going to close on a good note as well. So the importance of this show is that we are looking forward to the new year and sort of what boards can expect in 2016. This is where we get to sort of make predictions. And if people wanted to save the show, they could go back and see how smart we are. So each of us are going to offer, you know, 2 or 3 items that we feel that boards need to be aware of and prepare for. So since you're the guest, I'm going to let you start first on what topic you think that boards should prepare for in 2016.
Well, it's not a topic that they are unaware of in 2015. But as I go through my list, there's an overarching theme that we'll get to when I give you the rest of my list. But I think the #1 issue for boards is going to continue to be cybersecurity. It is such a huge issue. It is so pervasive in the threats are so pervasive in our markets and coming from so many different sources, whether it's espionage, whether it's people trying to steal a company's proprietary information, whether it's someone trying to create mayhem and mischief. And those sound like benign words, but they can really cause damage to a company. And so I think that's going to continue to be a big issue for boards as they figure out what their company's risks are, when they figure out what their strategy is going to be to address those risks, and when they consider their preparedness. So not a new issue, but one that I think is going to continue to confront companies, boards, investors, audit committees, and Washington in the form of government.
It would be hard for me to argue that that isn't the #1 issue going forward in 2016. As you know, I had the benefit of going to the FBI headquarters, and it is top of mind in every single branch and division now. It used to be this little segment, now it's a very big issue. So I concur with you that cyber risk is still something that is on everybody's agenda. Okay, my first thing probably isn't quite as popular or pervasive, okay, but that is the change that we're seeing with investors, and particularly institutional investors, where they were passive in the past, and now they are sort of flexing their muscle, whether it's the BlackRocks or the Vanguards or the TIAA-CREFs, all those that still, you know, always look to the long term, okay, and have always been supportive of management, but they are saying, listen, we get the ISS information, but we vote, you know, the way we think is right, but if you aren't doing things right, you're going to hear from us. And they've been communicative in sending letters. They said, communicate with us. So I think that if you put that all under the umbrella of shareholder engagement and changing that, and even a little bit activist, that's and that's nothing new either, but that's something that's going to be definitely in the forefront of 2016.
Well, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because for years, and I worked for many years at the Securities and Exchange Commission, and you know, the basis for our capital markets are that investors should get the information that they need to make an investment decision, and if they don't like what the company is doing, they should vote with their feet. And so you are now seeing investors doing that. And so just as there are no single institutional investor or retail investor, activist investors, if we want to put that label on them, are not monolithic either. And so they're all coming about this with their own expectations and their own demands, if you will, which I don't think is too strong of a word, because they are investing in the company and supporting the company. And so I suppose if we thought long and hard about it, it might be more surprising that it's taken until 2015 and 16 for investors to start flexing those muscles.
Well, some are index funds and they can't vote with their feet.
True.
So they in the past they weren't vocal, but now I think they're going to be vocal.
I do too.
So what's your second?
So my second, again, it's not a surprise, but it's this notion of disruptive forces. So as we're all getting so much more engaged in and understanding of how to use algorithms or data analytics, put whatever label you want on it. You know, it's not just Facebook anymore trying to figure out how you use their platform, but I think companies more and more are starting to use data analytics to figure out who their investors are and their consumers. Auditors more and more are going to use, I think, data analytics to help them do the data or to do the audit. And I think that it's what I think of as the crush of business. So technology, that big broad category, I think is really going to continue to have huge impacts on companies, on consumers. And my concern for boards of directors is the crush of business becoming so large that they are unable to spend the time that they should be spending on strategy and risk. And you can put into that some of the compliance and the regulatory aspects of that as well. So I think as companies become more technology driven, I think governments are a little slow to keep up because they're a bigger beast. And they're going to be asking questions, how does a company use technology? And is that something that is going to distract boards of directors from their strategy work and their risk work and make them more focused on those types of things?
Well, everybody wants more time for strategy. Every survey, everything you see, that's certainly the case. So,
and if you add cyber on there too, right, that's another big area where I think boards of directors have had to shift their focus.
Yeah. So my next one is the evolution of board composition, okay? And I look at that from not only how shareholders' engagement has changed what committee chairs have to do, so that changes how they're selected, and you have to make sure you have people for chairs, so that means who gets invited gets changed. You got diversity in there. I'm actually seeing some decent signs and changes to diversity, and I think that's going to continue. Okay, and let's hope that it does. We've both given a lot of work to make sure that that has happened. Assessments, I think that people's assessments are going to get better and that boards are going to have to make decisions about who stays, who goes. So I think that in 2016 there's going to be a lot of pressure to do that. And then the prediction that I'll make around that is I think right now about 30% of the companies have moved to a 75-year-old mandatory retirement age. I think that number is going to go up. I think that people are going to, and I'm not sure that's necessarily good. Now, the older I get, the more I think that that's good, okay? But the fact is, I think you'll see the number of 30% climb even higher because people are not going to want to lose their best directors, and we're all living longer and more competent longer. So I'm not sure, again, it's good.
Well, you touched on something that I think is important, and that's the assessment piece, right? Because that's a more natural way to look at board composition and longevity and those types of things. So rather than putting an arbitrary number that you can only serve until you're 75, or another way boards approach it is you can only be on the board for 10 years, right? So both of those things are somewhat arbitrary, and you might lose a really good board member because he or she has hit either of those two somewhat arbitrary markers.
Right.
So if I think we all were more supportive of a real robust assessment of board performance, individual members of the board's performance too, and did that hard work, I think that might be a better way to approach it. But that's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because these are people that you are sitting on the board with, that you're working with, and nobody wants to say, hey, Cindy, you're not doing a very good job.
So in the perfect world, you are absolutely right. There wouldn't be a need for term limits. There wouldn't be a need for mandatory, because you would take it on the competency and the contribution of each director on a regular basis, okay?
And that point in time, right? I might be a great board member now, but as the
Right.
company evolves, I'm not as good because I don't have that skill, you know, I don't have that expertise.
Yeah, well, it's not, I don't think it's going to happen. So, I mean, it'll continue to improve, but we'll never
Right.
get to that perfect
Right.
world. And that's been the scapegoat, has been the mandatory retirement age for a lot of them. So we have about 30 seconds apiece to do our last one. So you're going to have to be quick with your third one, but go ahead.
Disclosure. I think that you're going to see more and more pressure on not more disclosure, but right disclosure. And that's going to mean a move away from one size fits all and more toward a tailored approach. And that's going to mean the regulators are going to have to not prescribe certain rules and regulations, but rather let companies and boards of directors use their judgment to make the disclosures to their investors that make sense for them at that point in time.
Well, makes a lot of sense. My last one is universal ballot. That's my prediction. Chairman White at the SEC said at the corporate secretary's event that she is recommending that her staff investigate that, and she also recommended that companies don't wait for that. There are a lot of both pros and cons in that, and that's not something. I can see proxy access advancing faster than I can see the universal ballot, because we'll hear from the U.S. Chamber about that as well. But that is something that is going to be a 2016 topic. So with that, Cindy, I couldn't think of anything that's more pleasurable to have. Let's put on our gear and let's give a little toast, not only to the show hitting a milestone at the end of the year, but also to everybody that watches it. We want to express our appreciation to that. In addition to that, all the people that have made the show possible. So to everyone, we say Happy New Year, and we hope it's prosperous for everyone. Cheers.
Cheers to that.
And that will conclude our show. We hope you enjoyed it and found out that we aren't always so serious. And we'll look forward to another interesting topic next time, so we'll see you then.
Join us again next week for Inside America's Boardrooms. Brought to you with Knowledge Partners, NASDAQ, the Center for Audit Quality, and PwC. Along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, R.R. Donnelly, and the Society of Corporate Secretaries and Governance Professionals.